cathedrals, and like that's hitting them where it hurts. So to me, that's a sign of how we do it. Being public, being together, and not being isolated, and then the miracles happen, I'm telling you.
Excuse the
Hi.
late arrival.
Hey, no worries.
Hi.
Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
We're talking about overcoming our personal sense of fear and isolation when you take on the stuff about children who are being harmed and just what we're facing in the world, right? And that's all my info.
Oh, thank you. Excellent.
So I don't know if that helps, but it sure helped us just to be able to go through that together. Welcome.
Thank you. We've exchanged emails, but we haven't met previously. My name's Lynn, Lynn Reynolds.
Oh, okay, yeah.
From just down the road at
Hi.
Charles Uni.
Yeah,
And
great.
I'm pleased to be able to meet you finally.
Yeah.
Do you mind being part of this a Panama TV broadcast? Is that all right?
What does it put me on?
It's just a film I'm making. Are you all right being part of it?
That's fine.
Thanks for it. It's
Yeah.
to do with Kevin. No, okay.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Okay, my name's Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hi. Thanks for coming.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned 2 3-year-olds. Would you mind telling us actually what happened there? Because I just assumed that the schools were for children of about 6, 7-year-olds.
Under the law, you couldn't take a child if they were younger than 7. But the Mounties would scoop up the whole village often, bring all the kids in. In healing circles, you hear people tell stories. Yeah, I was 5 when they took me. My brother was 4. It was really common for a lot of little kids to be taken as well. And they wouldn't see their parents for 10, 15 years or more. I mean, it's just...
Did any of the parents actually do anything, tried to follow the law, or tried to appeal, or tried to,
Well, they don't have any... Don't forget, there's a law called the Indian Act. And it means that you're not a citizen in Canada if you live on a reservation. So, in fact, natives had no rights under the law. They're considered wards of the Crown. The language in the Indian Act says they're wards of the Crown in perpetuity, which means until the end of time, an Indian on his own land is a ward of the Crown in Whitehall, which means they're like a mentally incompetent person or a child under the law. They can't operate their own affairs. They can't operate legally. So that's not the case in the States. They were given the right to become citizens in 1924, Indians, but that's never happened in Canada. It's still this paternalistic British colonial system where we're your parents, And so in that system, anything, just like anything can happen to a child because they have no legal rights, anything can happen to Indians. People in our network are being killed by the police. No questions ever asked. Fake autopsies are done. There's over 500 missing Aboriginal women in British Columbia. There's a whole investigation about that. It's easy for Indians to disappear because under the law that can happen. When the H1N1 thing started, they went on the Indian reservations with the H1N1 experimental vaccine, and because under Section 76 in the Indian Act, you're not allowed to refuse hospitalization or medical treatment if you're living on a reserve.
And these laws are still...
Indian Act is still in effect. Right. And I just tell that to people and go, well, this is like what they had in South Africa. This is apartheid legislation, right? Legal apartheid. And that's why a lot of these things can happen under the law. So, no, Native parents could never appeal it. I met some who actually hid their kids. And there were some children who were moved around and hidden, but there were a lot of informants in the villages. There was a whole divide and conquer thing. And kids were encouraged to rat out each other and inform, and the kids who informed on the other kids got a better education, and often they became the chief. They're the well-paid government chiefs now who are saying, we're pleased with this apology, and we don't want an investigation into these schools, and don't listen to Kevin Annett, blah, blah, blah. That's coming from the government chiefs who are, when you look at their personal history, they were part of that protected group in the school. They have it in every system. I mean, in Auschwitz they had it, the Sonderkommando.
I come from the Czech Republic, so on different levels, we've also had a lot of, during the socialist time, socialist system, there was a lot of dealings with the Romanies, with the gypsies and Romani people of Slovakia and Bohemia, there is so much happening. There was a lot of things happening also in the orphanages, in the institutions for children, who were so they were not called orphanages, these institutions, and so it brings home a lot of what I know, because once the law is manipulated, there is nothing you can do. But it's just unbelievable. We are in the 21st century.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one thing they have done. They don't wait around for the government or the courts. There was one of the chiefs, the Squamish chief. The Squamish Nation is right on the west coast of Canada. It's like one in Vancouver. And there's this Chief Capilano, and he issued an eviction notice to all the churches on his territory because he said, "You never got my permission to build your churches here, right?" So he filed the eviction notice in Supreme Court. We posted it on all the churches, and they ignored it. But by ignoring it, they're not contesting it. So they were then, after 30 days, they're in a state of illegal trespass. So what he's then done is he's served a commercial lien on the churches, meaning a commercial lien is when when you don't get justice through the courts, you can put a lien on their property so that they can't conduct any commercial transactions. So under this commercial lien, the United Church, the Catholic, the Anglican Church of England, they're about to have liens put on them, and they won't be able to conduct any business. Yeah. And he's seriously pursuing this in the courts. So that has an amazing impact, because it means that he's fighting on his terms now, not through the white courts, which are all, they will not rule against the Crown because they're Crown-appointed judges. Yeah. And well, we work with him. He's actually coming to London. He's going to be one of our judges in the tribunal. He and Peter Yellowcrow and some other Indigenous chiefs. You see, a lot of the Indian nations in Canada, they never signed treaties. There was in Manitoba, where I'm from, Treaty number 1, it's supposed to have occurred between the Cree and Ojibwa chiefs in 1870 and the government. And you look at the treaty, and they have by the chiefs' names XXXXXX, all in the same handwriting. And Peter Yellowcrow, who's my friend in Winnipeg, looked at this and he said, "Now that's bullshit, because all of our chiefs were literate back then. They had been to school. They all knew how to sign the writing. That's a forged document, right?" And don't forget also that under common law, anything done fraudulently automatically negates it. So all of the laws in Canada having to do with Indians are null and void because they were done on a fraudulent basis. So in international courts, chiefs like Capilano could come and say, not only are all the laws relevant to us null and void, but all of the laws in Canada, because it's a fictitious jurisdiction that is set up and imposed on everybody there, including white people. So this is why, by linking up, natives are 2% of the population, but by linking up with everybody on that issue of common law and sovereignty, there's a tremendous weapon people have, because you expose the fact that the system is fraudulent and based on coercion and non-consent. And that, in other words, it's happened to all of us. Yeah. Maybe more extremely to Indians, but it's the same. It's kind of like now with these homeland security laws and everything. In the healing circles, they always joke, "Well, now you know what it's like to be an Indian on a reservation, right?" These laws, it always happened to us this way. Now you're tasting some of it, right? So it allows for a lot of creative, positive action. Now we don't have to all be just railing at how terrible it is. We can do something, and that's how I see this tribunal. It's a way to encourage that, and running it like a common law court where we put these people on trial and issue arrest warrants, and we can do that under common law.
Have you been in touch with people like Brian Garish?
Yeah, I know Brian.
Yeah,
and there's people in Canada in the what they call the free men on the land movement. Yeah, free men and women on the land. So that's all part of what we're talking about here, I think.
Kevin, forgive me if you've already covered this, and I'm just rehashing what you've already said, but has this ever been taken to the International Criminal Court?
Yeah, there's two German lawyers who 2 weeks ago filed suit in the International Criminal Court against the Pope. There are charges against him personally for, you probably know about the letters he sent out to bishops ordering them to cover up child abuse within the Catholic Church. So he's been named in an ICC lawsuit by these two German lawyers. One of them, Christoph, starts with an S. He's also going to come to our tribunal as a legal help. So what we're doing is we're trying to bring all of these forces together, and then we want to link up groups that hold their own tribunals. We want to link them up by video feed, so we got all of this evidence in the final report, and use that to say to people, look, we don't have to wait for the system anymore. We can do it ourselves, and that's what I find. That's why I think 600 people showed up at the courthouse in Liverpool here.
Yeah.
Because they lost their fear. They said, these are just guys in costumes. These bailiffs should be serving us. Police are not revenue collectors. They should be common law peace officers protecting us.
Yes.
That happened at Trafalgar Square. Last year we went and did a protest outside the Canada House, the Canadian Embassy right there on the side of Trafalgar Square. And this cop came up and said, there's a new bylaw, you can't hold protests and you're going to have to leave. So Alan Wyndham, who works in our network, said, excuse me, are you, he had a very polite kind of Oxford accent, are you a statute enforcer or a common law peace officer? And the guy looked at him like, what the hell are you talking about? Like he didn't even know. So he goes over and consults the sergeant. The sergeant comes over and he says, you have an obligation to defend our Magna Carta right to gather peacefully in this spot. Show me the law that supersedes that, right? And the sergeant talked on his thing for a little while, and then he said, okay, you can do this. And Alan said, I know we can do it. We didn't need your permission to gather here, but you, and then he invited him to take part. He said, do you want to come and take part here? Because you're just a guy in a suit, right? You're just, so then it was really neat what happened, because it felt like the whole edifice just went, it just crumbled, because it's mostly in our heads. You see, it's fear-instilled delusion that they are more important than us and they can tell us what to do.
And we don't know the law. I personally am guilty of that. I do not know the law, and I've got a friend who actually does, and he's been through a lot of, bad stuff because of that, because he will not take just someone coming to him and saying, could you please, show me your ID card or whatever, and he just says no, and I always admire him because I'm not aware of what I am entitled to, more or less. So that's another thing. Education in this sense would be very good.
Very important.
To
That knowledge is good to share.
It's amazing, isn't it? How easily the system can sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you push against it. It seems so big and monstrous. You push against it. It's amazing how easily it falls to the ground, and very often its biggest power is our perception of it. Our own.
That's what they feel of.
That's really, because at the end of the day we outnumber them 1 billion to 1. They can't control us by force. They have to, the control for them comes from in here.
And don't forget, in June, there could be as many as 1 million people on strike in this country, because for some crazy reason the government is cutting the benefits of the police and the army and the firefighters. Now that is very odd, because why would an elite do that to their armed bullies who they have working for them, right? And it might be connected to the integration into the European Union army and all that, which is coming down the road very quickly, I think. But there's tremendous allies there. I mean, think of the basis of unity now we have. We say to the cops and the soldiers, you're under attack too. I mean, you're all victimized by this, right? So, I think it's great. And
I don't know much about constitutional law and things like that. Just to sort of outline the principles in my head that are clear. But in terms of the European Union and what goes on, of course, that is not a common law system, is it?
No.
It's based on Roman law, as I understand it, which is fundamentally different from...
That's really important for people to know the difference, because Roman law, which canon law, church law comes out of it, and all the Napoleonic Code, which France and Quebec and Canada has, the notion is that the sovereign defines the rights for the subjects. They're sovereigns and subjects, and your rights are given to you by statutes, by either a parliament or a king or whoever, right? And those rights can be taken away. It says that in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. You have 4 rights, and they can be revoked by parliament, and they're notwithstanding any restrictions required by the rule of law, blah, 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 blah. So in other words, they're saying, here's a little gift for you, we can take it away. That's the Roman system. But the common law says you have inherent rights, and that's what was in the Founding Fathers document in the American Declaration of Independence. It said, Congress shall enact no law which subverts these basic inherent rights, because you're born with them, right? When you're born with them, you just assert them, and they're real. But if you step into the there's been this false jurisdiction set up, and you're given a name and birth, which turns you into a corporation.